A former world number 7 and the only Belgian player to ever be inside the top 10 of the ATP rankings, and therefore the best to ever do it from that country, David Goffin used to be one of the most consistent players on tour. It's a name that we were used to seeing in the later stages of the most important tournaments very often, for a long period of time. However, that has not been the case during the last few years. Unlucky with injuries and unable to display his best level of tennis, things have been tricky for him lately. Born in Liège, Belgium in 1990, David is the son of Michael, a tennis coach, and Francois, a housewife. He started playing tennis at the age of 6, and it was his father who introduced him to the sport. It was also him who took care of David's training during the early years, and also traveled with him across Europe for different competitions. Goffin has played tournaments around Europe since he was very young. As he grew up, he started competing internationally and took part in the ITF Junior Circuit, which he mainly played in 2008. That year, he reached his career-high ranking of number 10 in the world. In spite of his good rankings, he only played 2 slams at Roland Garros and Wimbledon, but didn't make it past the second round in any of them. The following year, in 2009, he turned professional. During his first 3 years on tour, from 2009 to 2011, Goffin played mainly futures and challengers. He won multiple futures titles, but no challenger events. In 2011, he won his first ATP match in Chennai, India, beating Somdev Devarman, India's #1 racket at the time, before eventually losing to Stan Wawrinka in the second round. He finished the year inside the top 200. The best was yet to come. 2012 was the year of his breakthrough. He started the season reaching his first ATP quarterfinals back in Chennai, where he had won his first match in the year prior. Being awarded a wild card into the event, he managed to beat his compatriot Xavier Malisse and Andreas Beck, before losing to Janko Tipsarevic in 3 sets. In April that year, he won his first ATP Challenger title in Guadalupe, beating Misha Zverev in the final. The most important achievement of this season would come later on in May, though. At Roland Garros, he didn't enter the main draw of the tournament and had to play the qualies, where he lost in the final round. However, tennis is a sport of opportunities, and thanks to the withdrawal of Gael Monfils, Goffin entered the tournament as a lucky loser. Incredibly, as it often happens is the case, he made great use of this opportunity and worked his way through to the 4th round. He beat Radek Stepanek and Arnaud Clement in the first 2 rounds, both matches in 5 sets, and then defeated Lukasz Kubat in the 3rd round to become the first lucky loser in the 4th round of a slam in over 15 years. Of course, all fairy tales come to an end, so Goffin eventually lost to Roger Federer in the 16th round, not without putting up a fight though. He managed to snatch the first set of that match. This great performance earned him a wild card for the Wimbledon Championships, an opportunity of which once again he made good use of. He managed to pass the first 2 rounds, beating Bernard Tomic and Jesse Levine, before eventually losing to Marty Fish in the 3rd round. As a result of these performances, he managed to play the Olympics and the US Open main draw on his own ranking. Unfortunately, he lost in the first round of both tournaments. Before the season ended, he won 1 more challenger title in Orleans, France, beating João Sousa in the final round. After a very good 2012 season, 2013 must have been disappointing for the Belgian. He didn't have any great results on the main tour, apart from a 3rd round appearance at the Cincinnati Masters. In fact, he only won a challenger title in Eskişehir, Turkey. These bad results carried on to the start of 2014, when the first months of the season were pretty shocking. He had to withdraw from the Australian Open with a quadricep injury, and he didn't have a great clay court season either. However, in July, he went on what must be the best streak of his career, winning 4 tournaments in a row, that being 20 consecutive match wins. The first 3 events were challengers held in Scheveningen, Netherlands, Poznan, Poland, and Tampere, Finland. He beat Andreas Beck, Blas Rolla, and Jarko Nieminen in the respective finals. And the 4th title was his maiden ATP title, which he obtained in Kitzbühel, Austria, beating home favorite Dominic Thiem in the final. His level of tennis remained on a high during the final few months of the year, as he reached the US Open 3rd round for the 3rd time and lifted his 2nd career ATP title in Metz, beating João Sousa in the final. And just like that, in 3 months, he climbed over 75 spots in the ATP rankings, leaving him inside the top 40. The season wasn't done yet, as he reached his first ATP 500 final in Basel, beating Milos Raonic in the quarterfinals on what was his first ever top 10 win. He eventually lost to Roger Federer in the final. This put him in the 22nd spot in the ATP rankings, where he finished the season. He also won the ATP Comeback Player of the Year award. In 2015, he had a very consistent season, reaching 2 further ATP finals in the S. Hertogenbosch and Gstaad, which he lost to Nicolas Mahut and Dominic Thiem respectively. He won a match at every single major tournament, losing in the second round in Australia, third round at Roland Garros and the US Open, and made the fourth round at Wimbledon. He also had a brilliant season playing for Belgium in the Davis Cup, reaching the final, which they unfortunately lost to Andy Murray's Great Britain. This was also the year he broke into the top 20 for the first time. If 2015 was good and consistent, 2016 was even better, managing to take his level of tennis and results one step further. He started the year by reaching the fourth round at the Australian Open for the very first time. Later on, he backed up that great start to the season by reaching back-to-back semifinals in Indian Wells and Miami, losing to Raonic and Djokovic respectively. His clay season was also decent, with quarterfinals in Rome being his best result until the French Open. In Paris, he reached his first Grand Slam quarterfinals, losing to Dominic Thiem in 4 sets. Wimbledon was another great tournament, as he reached the fourth round for the third consecutive slam that year, losing to Raonic after beating 2 sets to love up. That must have been a tough one. The rest of the year was not particularly great though. He reached the final in Tokyo and then had no achievements worth highlighting until he entered the ATP finals as an alternate due to Monfils' withdrawal. He only got to play a match and lost it to none other than Novak Djokovic. He finished the year inside the top 15, knocking on the top 10 at rank number 11. The following season was another very successful and consistent one. 2017 may be the best year of his professional career to date. He started the year very well, going one step further than the previous season in Australia, reaching the quarterfinals of a slam for the second time in his career. He lost to Grigor Dimitrov, and in February, he reached 2 back-to-back ATP finals in Sofia and Rotterdam, which he lost to Dimitrov and Tsonga respectively. These 2 results got him inside the ATP's top 10 for the very first time, becoming the first man from his nation to do so. He once again had a very strong clay court season, reaching the semifinals in Monte Carlo and quarterfinals in Madrid. Unfortunately, he injured himself at the French Open during his third-round match on what could have been a great run in Paris. The return to the tour was not easy, with a couple of easy losses in a row, but he eventually caught back his rhythm and reached the US Open fourth round for the first time. Then, he won back-to-back titles in Shenzhen and Tokyo to qualify for the ATP finals, on his own merits this time and not as an alternate. In London, he beat Nadal and Thiem in the round-robin stage and finished second in his group behind Grigor Dimitrov. In the semifinals, he beat Roger Federer for the very first time and ended up losing the final to Dimitrov in 3 sets. He finished the year on a career-high ranking of world number 7. The season, however, did not end there. Belgium had a second Davis Cup final in 3 years to be played. Even though Goffin won his 2 singles rubbers against Pauli and Tsonga, the French team won the tie by 3-2 and frustrated Goffin's dream for a second time. The start of 2018 wasn't great. He lost in the second round in Australia and had to retire in the Rotterdam semifinal against Dimitrov due to an incident where he got hit by a ball in the eye. This resulted in him having to withdraw from a few tournaments, and his return in Miami wasn't great either. He started catching rhythm once the clay season started, making it to the semifinals in Barcelona, quarterfinals in Monte Carlo and Rome, and fourth round at Roland Garros. His grass court season wasn't great, but he had a couple more decent results in the final months of the season, making the semifinals in Cincinnati, where he was forced to retire after losing the first set to Federer, and fourth round at the US Open. Unfortunately, his season ended early in the Asian swing due to elbow issues. 2019 was another season that went from low to high. The start of the year and the clay court season were decent, winning a couple of matches here and there, but not achieving any results worth highlighting. The grass season, in fact, was a highlight as he reached the final in Halle, which he lost to Federer, and made it to the quarterfinals at Wimbledon, where he lost to Djokovic. The US hardcourt swing was also very good, as he reached his first Masters 1000 final in Cincinnati, where he was beaten by Daniil Medvedev, and then made it to the fourth round at the US Open for the 3rd consecutive year, losing to Federer. 2020 was a tough year for everyone. His start of the season hadn't been great, but when tennis resumed in August, he reached the US Open's fourth round yet another time before eventually losing to Shapovalov. He had no great results afterwards. In fact, he tested positive for COVID-19 in October, having to withdraw from a few tournaments. 2021 wasn't a great year either. While his results were decent, his body didn't hold up. He reached the semifinals at his season opener in Antalya and then won his 5th ATP Tour title in Montpellier in February. When he reached the quarterfinals in Monte Carlo, he had to miss Wimbledon due to an ankle injury. He ended his season after the US Open due to a knee injury, just barely still inside the top 40. The start of his 2022 season was pretty terrible, unable to win consecutive matches. By the time the clay season started, he had dropped to number 74 in the rankings, the lowest he has ever been since July of 2014. However, that didn't last very long, as he won the title in Marrakech, which dropped him back inside the top 50. His results during the rest of the clay court swing were not great, but he managed to finish it on a high, reaching the French Open third round. He also starred in a great match against Rafa Nadal in Madrid for the third round, during which he had 4 match points which he couldn't convert and ended up losing. A little bit out of nowhere, he reached the quarterfinals at Wimbledon, where he lost to the home favorite Cameron Norrie. His US swing was pretty bad, losing in the first round of all 5 tournaments he played. He had one nice moment before the season ended, beating the world #1 Carlos Alcaraz in Astana. 2023 was another tough one. Unable to play his best tennis and filled with injuries, Goffin ended the year outside of the top 100 for the first time in 10 years. The highlight of his season was winning his first challenger title in 8 years, in front of his home fans in Autigny-Louvain-la-Neuve. 2024 is not being an easy year at all either, as David is having to play a lot of qualifying tournaments to enter the most important events. This, however, showcases his love for the sport and his willingness to return to his best level. In fact, he did manage to qualify for the Australian Open, the BNP Paribas Open in India Wells, and Roland Garros, where he was also able to win his first-round match against a recent ATP Tour winner, Giovanni Mtesi-Picard. While he might not be in his best moment tennis-wise, David Goffin is living a great moment outside of the court. He's expecting his first child with his wife Stephanie, who he has been dating since 2018. Knowing what he's capable of as a tennis fan, I hope that he can get back to his best and provide us with some great entertainment, as he's done for the past decade very well. If you enjoyed today's video, don't hesitate to subscribe to the channel. That way you don't miss any upcoming videos. And also check out our feed to watch some of our past videos. We'll see you next time.